This is what Paris looks like right now. This is what it will hopefully look like by the end of 2022. For Parisians and tourists alike, the first Sunday of each month is more than just a day for a stroll along the Champs-Élysées. France's most popular attractions, usually full of bustling traffic, are transformed overnight into a peaceful haven, free from any vehicles, thanks to the Day Without Cars. The first ever car-free day in Paris took place in September of 2015, just 1 year after Mayor Anne Hidalgo took office and kicked off her environmental plans to end diesel fuel pollution in Greater Paris, as well as decrease vehicle usage within the city. This ambitious project from the Paris Respire Initiative, led by Mayor Hidalgo, marks the beginning of a reality that has been under development for years. If things go as planned, then the City of Lights could look completely different by late 2022, giving Paris the title car-free. While the idea of going car-free in cities like Los Angeles or Dallas might sound impossible, Europe is diving headfirst into making pedestrians the priority and building better infrastructure for public transportation. Cities like Milan and Oslo have already got bans in place. Not only will this be common practice, but the city will add new bus and cycle lanes as well as road reclamation to create an even better walking culture. But Paris is taking it one step further by transforming the Champs into a bustling garden. The €200 million project will reduce vehicle space by half and dedicate most of the avenue to nature and walkways. While it sounds like a paradise, the road to a car-free future is bumpy and unpredictable. But the city's original infrastructure may have already set it up for success. Historically, Paris was built around the core of Isle de la Cité, the Louvre, and the Latin Quarter. The compact city was designed perfectly for on-foot travel. Iconic sites were all built pretty close together, and though the city expanded outwards, the network of connectivity was maintained. As the automobile became common around the world, Paris's wider avenues and roads resulted in a traffic boom and the squeezing of pedestrians. Even narrow sidewalks didn't come into existence until many citizens wrote open letters in protest. Parisians had long objected to the increase of horse-drawn carriages and later on vehicles. The auto boom of the 1920s to 1960s, famous in the United States, hit European cities at the same time and made cars more affordable for middle-class families. While that increased productivity in the capital, it led to air pollution and congestion that greatly reduced quality of life. Public outrage led to city planners building underground parking garages and highways, though the problem persisted well into the early 2000s and is something that can be seen today. Pollution in European city centers is responsible for nearly 10,000 premature deaths per year and a rise in asthma diagnosis. It is on these numbers that Mayor Hidalgo and her right-hand man, David Belliard, are carrying out the second greatest revamp of the City of Light. Plans to get rid of over 70,000 parking spaces have already been met with praise, and the diplomatic process will give city residents a voice on how the new area should be used. The space will most likely advance the 15 minutes agenda that Hidalgo ran and was re-elected on. Her concept involves having every capable necessity, such as hospitals, schools, recreational zones, and working offices, all within a walking distance of 15 minutes for residents. One such example is the Minim Barracks, which looks like your average housing block at first glance until you realize that there is no parking lot. In its place is a tree garden and arts centers, daycares, and offices. The same idea is echoed in the bike plan, which adds 110 miles of cycling paths and tens of thousands of cyclist parking spaces. The bike plan will also take education about public and alternative transport into the classroom, proposing bike lessons for elementary school students and adults. Now, while cars won't be banned altogether, the new rules would nonetheless make it illegal to drive across the city centre without stopping. The only vehicles that would be allowed are for public transit, delivery drivers, workers, and residents. As for what the city centre, or low traffic zone is, as it's being called, well, an area of about 5.4 square miles within Paris's innermost ring of boulevards will be covered, as you can see here. That would cover about 55% of total traffic, more than 100,000 cars passing through the zone on average per day, Paris officials say. This is a move that will surely bring down air pollution, bring peace and safety to the areas, and reduce noise pollution. The zone may even be extended even more if the public desires to do so. While it sounds radical, most European cities are taking pages from Paris's newest police policies, and some of them have been in the no-car game for decades. The Spanish town of Pontevedra has beautiful landmarks and a stunning view of the sea. It's also car-free. The town banned vehicles from its center in the 2000s, and it has since enjoyed a CO2 emission decrease of 70% and gained 12,000 residents. Venice and Madrid introduced a ban on gas-powered cars older than the year 2000 in its city center. They eventually pushed the line in 2020, stating that diesel and gas-powered car models from 2006 below are banned altogether. The radical plan worked as traffic in the city was cut by 20% on the first day. Oslo is another city that's been given both praise and criticism for its car-free initiatives. With a vision to be carbon neutral by 2030, planners restricted private vehicle access into the city, created several new pedestrian walkways, and eliminated 700 parking slots. They also replaced many street parking lots with benches, mini parks, and grass patches. Even grand cities like London are getting in on the action. The city drastically reduced congestion by designating half of the roads as pedestrian priority. But that's just one part of a larger plan to block access to vans, taxis, and buses. One controversial move was the introduction of congestion fees for Uber and other private vehicles that enter central London. A $14 fee decreased the number of vehicles in the central city by 30%, and although that works, one other city is taking more of an indirect approach. Copenhagen might be the most successful when it comes to reducing cars and the emissions that they leave behind. Since the 1960s, Copenhagen has set aside pedestrian-only areas and even designed bicycle-only superhighways to push the public into cycling. It worked, and today the 8 superhighways dedicated to cyclists continue to expand, and Copenhagen has one of the lowest rates when it comes to car ownership. While the benefits are obvious, these plans have faced heavy criticism from politicians who disagree with the demonization of cars and those commuting in and out of these major cities for work. Perhaps the biggest criticism of the Paris car-free projects is the social exclusion that's perceived to come with it. The project has been accused of limiting the commute of those who don't live in the city center and favoring the rich who can afford to live in the city and don't need cars for longer journeys. Deputy Mayor David Belliard criticized this view by stating that most Paris residents are not rich, and that it's the rich who use their cars more often. Therefore, plans to remove vehicles can't be classist. Another major criticism is the lack of alternatives for people who aren't looking to take up cycling or walking, which could take longer. Public transport needs to be addressed, and an increase in bus routes and high-speed trains would only speed up the car removal process and give residents a safety net. Despite the critique, the idea of carless cities isn't going away anytime soon. A major contributor to that is the generational change of mentality when it comes to owning cars. Millennials and Gen Zs, who have become more aware of the alarming environmental state of the world, don't see cars as a viable option anymore. The pressure from younger lawmakers and voters to decongest city centers and boost public health by eliminating diesel cars is only going to grow, and car enthusiasts will either have to move towards electric and clean fuel cars or embrace the shift to cycling and alternative transport. Either way, the city of Paris and other major European metro areas are looking at a future full of alternative travel and a better way of reversing the damage that came with development in the past. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more.